This video is for Homework and Mastery 2.1, Understanding Integers. When using inequality symbols with integers, the positive numbers, negative numbers, and zero are called signed numbers. On the number line, numbers decrease in value as we move from right to left. For example, look at the number line here. Notice we start out at -10, -8, -6, -4. Here's our zero that we're used to. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We're increasing from 0 to 10. Same thing here, we're actually increasing from -10 to 0. We increase as we move from the far left to the right. Meaning, I actually have more money in the bank if I have a -$6 in the bank than I would if I have -$10. When we graph, we start from 0. The negative sign means that we go left. A positive sign would mean we would go right. So a -7, we start out at 0 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the left. Same thing with the others. Now then, when we want to think about which one is greater than, which one is less than, remember from previous homework, this is our less than symbol, this is our greater than symbol. Remember that our large end opens up to our larger number, our smaller end opens up, points to our smaller number. So look at these and think about it. Which one is larger, which one's smaller? -2 or -8? -9 or 7? 8 or -32? -2 is actually greater than -8. If you think about it on the number line, -2 would be farther right on our number line than -8. -9 is less than 7. I would definitely want to have $7 rather than be in the hole $9. And 8 is greater than -32. So when you're looking at signed numbers, especially when you're talking about which one's greater than, which one's less than, it's opposite when you're talking about negative numbers. The larger the negative number, actually the smaller the number is, the less money you have. State the opposite of each symbol, of each number. When I'm talking about the opposite is literally just changing the sign of the number. Therefore, the opposite of 5 is -5. And the opposite of -7 is 7. We want to look at these because when we start looking at what happens with positive and negative numbers when we multiply them, what the negative sign actually means is the opposite of that number. So whenever we get multiple negative numbers in it, it actually means the opposite of the opposite. Let's look at what I'm talking about here. Okay, I start out with this big long -16. These two negatives right here means the opposite of a -16. Well, what is the opposite of a -16? It's a +16, correct? So I would still have this negative sign on the outside. What is the opposite of a +16? That would be a -16. So when we're talking about multiple negatives, you need to look at it as being the opposite of the number in front of it. You also can think of it as this is a negative times a negative, and we will get into those when we're talking about multiplying integers. Let's look at absolute value. The absolute value of a number is the distance between that number and 0. Literally, it just means how far is it from 0. Well, the distance from 0 to a positive 6 is 6 units. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The distance from 0 to negative 6 is also 6 units. So the absolute value of positive 6 or negative 6 is 6. These bars right here mean absolute value. If a number is positive or 0, the absolute value is just that number, meaning I want the absolute value of 7. Or, like on the previous one, the absolute value of 6. It's just that number, in this case 7, because I went 7 units from 0. Well, how far did I go from 0 to get to 0? I went 0 places, so it's 0. If a number is negative, make the number positive to find the absolute value. What it's saying is, how many units did I go from 0 to negative 7? I went 7 units. Therefore, the absolute value of negative 7 is positive 7. Let's see if we can simplify a couple on our own. Look at the absolute value of negative 6 and the absolute value of 11. What do you get? Hopefully you got 6 and 11. Notice, anytime on these, the absolute value, the answer, becomes positive. And that will be the case as long as there's nothing out front. Here's something. I want to know which one is larger, or are these equal? Absolute value of negative 19 compared to the absolute value of 7. Well, we have to do a little bit of thinking here first. First of all, what is the absolute value of 19? What's the absolute value of 7? Well, the absolute value of 19 is 19, and the absolute value of 7 is 7. Now then, I can put in the greater than, less than symbols, because which one is larger? 19 is actually greater than 7. Therefore, the absolute value of 19 is greater than the absolute value of 7. When you start out with something like this, find the absolute values of each of the numbers, and that will help you solve the overall problem. Let's look at this one. Negative absolute value of negative 23. Okay. Well, we got to do some figuring first. First of all, what's the absolute value of negative 23? Well, I have it here. It's 23. Notice this negative sign here is carried down. All I have done is replaced the absolute value of the negative 23 with this 23 here. And I have left this negative on the outside. So, what is the opposite of a positive 23? It is a negative 23. So the opposite of the absolute value of negative 23 is a negative 23. Let's look at this graph. The line graph indicates the low temperatures for selected cities on a typical winter day. Okay, so in Albany, we're up at 8 degrees. Boston, we're up at about 17. Buffalo, we're up at about 9, something like that. Burlington, we're here at -8. Fairbanks, we're down here at -32. Syracuse, we're up here, looks like +4 maybe. In which city was the temperature colder, Syracuse or Albany? So I don't have to look at anything except for Albany and Syracuse. Albany is here, Syracuse is here. Which one's colder? Well, if Albany is here on this line right here, and Syracuse is here, looks like Syracuse was colder. Yeah, Syracuse was colder. Did Burlington record a positive or negative temperature for the day? Well, let's see here. Here's Burlington. Here's its temperature. Notice, the black line is the 0 line. Anything above it is positive, anything below it is negative. So Burlington actually recorded a -8 degrees that day. So it recorded a negative temperature. We have to be careful when we're talking about positive and negative numbers. Please make sure that you really watch your signs, and I will be re-emphasizing this as you go along in the integer section. But positive and negative numbers are very important in everything that we do. You will see them in everything, your bank accounts, anything of that nature, because you know that if you go over your bank account it becomes negative, different things like that. So just please really watch it, but if you need to, start drawing yourself a number line, and that will help you start seeing a little bit on whether something is greater than or less than the other number. Again, if you need help, please let one of us know.